If you have read this book by Molly Gebrian, Learn Faster, Perform Better, you have heard about interleaved practice. And even if you don't know the book, you may be familiar with the concept because many people like myself are talking about it more and more online. I recently got a request from one of my email newsletter subscribers requesting that I talk about interleaved practice in terms of how to actually do it. Like, a lot of people know the concept, but basically the question was, can you give some examples and what does it actually look like? So this won't be a long video. I'm just basically going to show you a little bit of how I practice. And if you're not familiar with the concept, it's basically this, that you take two totally different things. It could be a different piece, different composer, different time signature, whatever, and you go from one to the other back and forth. Hence the term interleaved. It's like, imagine you're taking two strings, you know, basket weaving or whatever. So there's many ways to do this. There's not a right way, but I'll show you some of the ways I've used it in the past and still use it today in my teaching. We have, I don't know, I'll just play some random pieces. Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, let's say book 1, number 2, C minor. Beethoven. I just literally grabbed some random scores off the shelf, no plan for this. How about the Moonlight? Because everybody knows it, just so it's easy as a reference to make the point. First movement, why not? Okay, Chopin Etude, how about number 3, the E major? Okay, so what we're going to do is, let's say I had never learned a piece of any of these before, which is not true. I've actually played all 3 of these pieces, but let's just say I hadn't. The first question I often get when I tell students to do it is like, is this only a finishing stage? Is interleaving only when you're like already really familiar with the pieces and when you're almost ready to perform them and you're just trying to make them a little bit more secure? It absolutely can be, and usually it will be in terms of if you go to the extreme with it. But you can actually use it right when you're learning the piece. So in general, it's basically like just taking a piece of one and going to the other and switching back and forth. But I actually like to do it with 3 pieces. And when I was recording my Memory Volume 1 album, which you can find on Spotify, a lot of those pieces I would do 3 at a time. I'd do like a movement of the Bach partita, and I'd play, you know, maybe a measure or whatever. And then I'd do a section of Chopin Scherzo, number 2, and so on. And then I would go to like a Ligeti Etude, number 10 I had. This thing. And I would do a small chunk of each and go back and forth. I never went so far as doing 4 different things, but I found 3 better than 2, again, for at least a finishing stage, because it challenges the brain all the more. But let me just show you an example. So in general, if you're going to alternate between any number of pieces, I like to just make it simple and pick the same length. So I'll do 1 measure of the Bach, I'll do 1 measure of Moonlight Sonata, and then I will do 1 measure of Chopin Etude. Now, the reason you could theoretically do this right when you're first learning it is there's no rule that you have to interleaved by memory. Of course, when you do that, it will be even more helpful in terms of the security. But I can interleave right when I'm first sight reading it. Let's say I've just started the Bach today, I've never looked at it, I'm going slowly to get the right notes, and this is all I can do by sight reading. Okay, then you jump right away to the Beethoven. 2, 3, 4, to the downbeat. Okay, that's it. That's not very hard. Now, I will say that's in cut time, so forget the timing. But the idea is I played 1 measure here, and then I'd go 1 measure of the Chopin. I always like, if I play 1 measure, I like to go 1 extra note, because let's say you did 1 measure, 1 measure, 1 measure, 1 measure, and you know all 4 perfectly. You still may have troubles playing all 4, because for 1, it's more endurance. But for 2, you may not have made the connections of the end of this thing and the beginning of that thing. So if you always, as a just perpetual habit, you always play 1 note past the measure, you will always get used to the flow. So then it's like measure 1 plus a note, measure 2 plus a note, 3 plus a note, 4 plus a note. Then 1 to 4, you have no gaps in the chain, so to speak. Hence why I was doing that. So anyway, it would just be like 1 of each. Now you go to measure 2. of the Bach. And I'm just pretending I'm just learning this piece, so that's why I'm doing it left hand alone. You could do both hands. You could do whatever you want, but the idea is small chunk, then small chunk in the next piece. So Moonlight Sonata, second measure, to the downbeat. Okay, second measure of Chopin, to the downbeat. Okay, so what you're seeing is same length of each piece, just for simplicity, so you have less processing, more focus on what you're actually doing. Make it as simple as you need to ensure success. At the same time, I've talked about the 90-10 principle of learning before, which is not named in this book, but she talks about very similar ideas, keeping the brain engaged, staying focused, having a goal for the repetition you're doing. So all of that's helpful. What I like to do with that, if you're not familiar with 90-10, it's the idea of always keeping it just outside of your reach, never going for 100% perfection, going for like really close, but keeping yourself fully engaged at all times. So it would mean playing fast enough to do that, or playing complex enough with two hands to do that. Like right when you feel like I might start to fall apart is the point where you know you're actually problem solving. And I've said this 100 times, practicing is problem solving. It is not just sitting there going through the motions. So let's say I'm new to this piece still, but I've done it a few times. I'm going to try to put the hands together already and play measure 1 to the downbeat. Okay, see, I like kind of hesitated a little bit, like kind of, this is all pretending because I've played this a million times, but this is like normal situations we would all go through in first learning a piece. Like, I feel a little sticky in the left hand or something. But it's just enough that I'm like, I almost got it. That is forcing me to think about the thing. Now, if you're doing, and you feel stiff, like, then that's too far out of reach, and you have to go slower or play one hand or whatever. But just keep yourself a little bit uncomfortable. The mindset of, this is hard, should always be there in your practice. If it ever feels easy, it's become too easy to actually become valuable to you. So anyway, here's another golden rule of interleaving. Go from one to the next. Like one measure, whatever length you're doing, one measure, two measures, half measure, go from one chunk to the next literally as fast as possible. The more time you give yourself from one thing to the next, the less you're actually processing the change. And so if I play measure 2 in Bach and then measure 2 in Moonlight, but I take half a minute, you know, not literally. And I breathe, I reorient. Like, yeah, it's still shocking because it's a different key, a different time, and it sounds weird. But it's not nearly as disorienting as if I just go directly there. So to the downbeat, now measure 3. And then, see that? It's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, go, you know? And it's on purpose disorienting, because the faster you can do that, the more you realize how well you know it or don't. And so I kind of like explain this all the time. When I was at University of Miami, Santiago Rodriguez told me that I was preparing the Rachmaninoff Red Riding Hood Etude. I've got a recording on my channel if you want to check it out. But he was saying, you know, when you're going to a competition with this, which I was, you have to know this so well that you could just be woken up at 3 in the morning from a deep sleep, thrown at the piano and said, play the etude, and you would be able to do it at the highest level. And his point, I understand this now after teaching more than ever, because I've had probably 100 students come to me and say, oh, this sounded better at home, as they're making tons of mistakes and they're forgetting things left and right. And they're like, I promise you I had this. And I'm like, I know you did. However, there's things we do in the practice room that we don't realize we're doing. And then under pressure, they collapse. So we actually have to be over-prepared for the situation. It can't just be like, oh, I had it right where I wanted it. Because then under pressure, it's going to go down here. So you have to have it 5 levels more trained. You have to have more range of dynamics. You have to have tempo that's faster than you're used to. You have to have more ways you've changed the pedal than what you plan to do, so that your overall control of every element of the music is just like there all the time. And so one of those things would just be the confidence of just starting right away with no context. Because anything that I play, let's say, whatever, Chopin First Ballade. You know, like that. It has nothing before it. So when I learn that measure, I know it super well because there's no context. So I saw it just for what it was, not because of what it came from. It came from silence. So if you treat every measure like it's the first measure, then you will see it for what it is, and not like if I play 16 here. Like, I just see that. But most people are only used to 16 because of it coming after 15. So it feels like a follow-up to that. But if you're used to just like, no, this exists even without 15, it just happens to come after 15, then you have this different mindset of like truly observing the details and the harmony for what it is at every given moment. Now, I mention that because this is what interleaving actually helps with. If you just play measure 2 of that and measure 2 of that, you're not thinking about what came before it because it's a whole different piece. So hence why if you do this with 3 pieces, or maybe even 4, you're doubling the progress all the more because you're just removing all context from everything entirely and making it extremely hard. And through solving the harder problem, putting your brain in that level of stress, you're actually allowing yourself to really, well, fitting, become a keyboard warrior because you learn it better. By the way, this is Amadeus Apparel. If you haven't heard about it, I'm one of their affiliate partners. I have a link in the description where you can look at these awesome classical music shirts if you're interested. Oh, and 10% off with my code, Aaron Petit, at checkout if you want some. So in any case, that's how you do this. That's how you gain this level of mastery. Now, the only thing that really changes when you know a piece versus when you're first learning it is that I would do this whole process by memory. And if that's hard for you, like both pieces by memory, measure 1, measure 2, measure 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do that, then know one of them really well and pre-memorize it. Do one of them by memory and the other one with no memory. So I'll look at the score for Bach and then I'll play first measure of Moonlight. Like, and then, see, I was looking at that. Now, measure 2 of Bach, I'm looking. Measure 2 of Moonlight. Measure 3 of Bach. Measure 3 of Moonlight. And then, you know, so on. And so on and so forth. So that's like, you're halfway there now. You have half of the interleave memorized, the other half you're looking. Once you do that, you could flip it. Close the Bach, open the Moonlight. Again, these are all theoretical because I have all these pieces memorized. But now you can see the Bach, not looking at, and Moonlight looking at. You get the point, right? Like you look at one, you memorize the other, and then you flip it, then you close both. There's the proof. 2, 3, 4. Measure 2. Measure 2. Measure 3. Oh, I messed that up. You know, see, so this can work very, very, very well. Another factor that you might change is instead of playing one measure, if it's really hard, make it easier by doing half a measure. If it's not that hard and you're getting 100% success rate, you need to make it harder so that you're always pushing the brain. Then do 2 measures at a time, right? And actually it depends on, sometimes actually playing less can be harder, but not because it's less. It's because, let's say you play half a measure, you're probably more familiar with the first half of the measure than the second half of the measure. So for example, let's pull out the Chopin again. If I were to play the first measure with no context, this is just the words, I know it. haven't played this piece in 18 months. I haven't even looked at it, haven't taught it, haven't sight read through it. I just still remember it. But if I were to play like the second half, I mean, I might have like remembered it's B7. But probably what would have helped me to remember that is kind of thinking in my head like, oh, E major, da, da, B7. Okay, it's B7. Like, even if I don't play it, I almost rehearse what led up to it. And so it's harder to start not just at a random measure, but in the middle of a measure or on a random beat. And I remember when I was preparing a Bach Prelude and Fugue, it was this E major book 1. There was all sorts of harmony stuff, especially in the fugue. And my teacher was like, you know, you should be able to start on any 16th note in the whole fugue if you really know it. I was like, you're kidding me, right? He's like, no, like, you're playing this in an international competition. You need to know it. You cannot have any room for doubt. And I'm like, okay. So that week, I actually transcribed that fugue, the E major, into all 12 keys. I literally played it, well, not the whole piece at a time. I would do like 2 measures at a time, maybe 1. But I would learn that measure, then play it in the other 11 keys outside of E major, and then come back, go to the next measure, do it all over again until I've done through the whole piece. And like, I knew it so stinking well at that point, because when you go to a new key, you have to consider every element, every shape, every scale degree, every chord progression, because you don't have any muscle memory in the other key. You're just knowing it for what it is, and you have to understand the entire framework. Do I recommend this in all pieces all the time? No, that is an extreme example. But I'm making a point that the better you know every moment, the easier it is to just start from that moment. And that for me, that is the #1 takeaway of Molly Gebrian's theory, or concept, or philosophy, or whatever you want to call it, of interleaved practice. So, hope you learned something from this video. By the way, if you're watching this before April 17th, 2026, many of you unfortunately won't, but if you are, I'm hosting Molly Gebrian, interviewing her next Friday on April 17th. And the class is going to be $20 to attend. You can come, meet her, ask questions. It's literally a life-changing opportunity. It is not cheap to get her, and she's extremely narrow on her schedule. So this may be your only chance to be able to do that, especially at this price. If that interests you, just comment Gebrian, G-E-B-R-I-A-N, in the comments, and I'll send you a little sample page on what the class is going to be about and how you can join. If you didn't happen to do that in time, no worries, there will be a replay, and many of you will still be able to get at least the replay, even though you won't be able to meet her live, and that will be available in my Key Learners Piano Club, which is free to join, so check out the top link in the description to be able to join my club there. See you soon.